Foreign Policy Times. I'm thankful to you for sparing time from the busy schedule to share your views on a subject which is of crucial importance to you. And we know that you have been sharing your thoughts for a long time on this subject. My first question naturally that comes to our mind is every country puts relations with the neighbors on priority. So has been the case with India right from 47.
Right.
But in 2014, a new word came up, that is neighborhood first.
Right.
What exactly is the significance of this word first and why it was added by the present Prime Minister?
Firstly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on India's foreign policy, a subject that I have studied and I write on this issue on a regular basis. That's my part of my, that's my primary job, responsibility for Economic Times. I'm the foreign policy writer for Economic Times. As you correctly said that, every country puts neighbors at the top of their foreign policy, and neighbors should be the priority for any country, whether big or small, right? Be it in, say, in Africa, even if it's a small country, also, first deals with neighbors and forms a policy for a neighbor and then goes beyond it, right? Similarly for Latin America, for Asia, for Europe, for Australasia, and for North America, right? For US, as we have seen, the priority, the first, although it's a global power, it's world's number one superpower, but the priority is Mexico and Canada, and even Cuba, which is in its neighborhood, right? So similarly, it has been the case for India. In India, it's a little different in the sense that some of these countries were born out of undivided India. Particularly what we know as Pakistan today, and what is Bangladesh today, and what was earlier East Pakistan. So there is somewhere an umbilical cord, between these three countries. And before 1947, India had a direct boundary, or undivided India had a direct boundary with Afghanistan. So it's almost, Afghanistan is a direct neighbor of India. And if you see geographically that India is geographically in such a position that it not only has immediate neighbors, it has many countries in its extended neighborhood, which is today becoming a neighbor. And today country in the Gulf is, we can't call it distant neighbor. It's a neighbor. But today Indonesia is also a neighbor, because Indonesia shares maritime boundary with India, if we consider, because of Andamans, right? So somewhere in the late 80s and in the 90s, as we sort of graduated from the in the Cold War, in the post-Cold War period, and we were building our economy, somewhere the focus got lost, and we were only focusing on big powers. But as in life, neighbors come first, whether in a locality or in a society, or in a village, and in a town, and then in a city. And similarly for country, you can't go across if you don't deal with your neighbor. So first you have to handle your neighbor, and then you go across. I think that was the principle which the current party had in mind, and the Prime Minister had in mind, and he immediately coined this term neighborhood first policy. And if we see that on the inauguration of this government in May 2014, all the seven heads of state at that point of time, heads of state and heads of government were invited, right? That included Nawaz Sharif, he responded and he attended. That included Hamid Karzai, who is no longer the president of Afghanistan. That included Mahinda Rajapaksa, with whom relations were not smooth, or even Abdullah Yamin, with whom the relations were not smooth, right? And and included Koirala in Nepal, who later passed away, right? And of course Bangladesh, and Bangladesh Prime Minister couldn't come despite her close ties with India, and she sent the Speaker of the Parliament. And Bhutan, of course, as we know, is a close neighbor. So and he went by that principle. you know. Yes, there were certain rough edges, particularly if I say in Nepal. Uh, there were. I personally think that the blockade was not fully a right decision and may have been handled better. We lost some of our
Friends there.
yeah, some of our friends there, and some so we are trying to regain, if we say, the lost ground. But Bhutan,
We
we
always
have
had good
good
quality
relation. We have continued to maintain that. In Bangladesh, the relations have strengthened at the best phase of Indo-Bangladesh relations. And today, the Bangladesh foreign minister is in Delhi, choosing India as the first destination of his visit. He's a new foreign minister, but he chose India as the first destination. In Sri Lanka, if we see, we have better relations after Rajapakse. Of course, there will be some smooth edges because, like in the family, you have both, friendship and challenges with your family members. So, of course, the challenges with neighbors will be more than the challenges with. See, even in a friendship, it cannot be everything cannot be positive. There will be issues even between the best of the allies. There are issues within NATO, or or within between Russia and its allies. And so similarly, there will be issues. And we see the success of Indian foreign policy neighborhood, in particularly the last year when there was a change of guard in Maldives. And the new Maldives president not only made India as a first destination, but he said that India first. For Maldives also India first, which his predecessor was trying to bypass, and trying to sort of reach out to somewhere else, bypassing India. I think some of India's neighbors have tried to do that, but they've also realized, which we have a particularly difficult neighbor, and of course they have different geopolitics. And but rest, for example, even Afghanistan, which doesn't share boundary with India, but feel more comfortable with India than Pakistan.
You can say that it has been a positive approach from
It's
India,
actually, yeah,
and
yeah.
it has paid dividends.
It has paid dividends, and of course, every policy, sorry, cannot always have a smooth run. And of course, in the implementation of that, there you will make certain, flaws, which could be tactical flaws, which could be strategy. I think neighborhood first is a strategy. We may have made some tactical errors, and as we go, I think we need to keep learn from those tactical errors, and then have a more holistic, inclusive, I would say inclusive is the right word, inclusive approach towards our neighbors. Because at the end of the day, if we prosper, our neighbors prosper. If our neighbors prosper, we prosper. The example that I want to give is Bangladesh. The economy of Bangladesh, the way it has progressed, is actually helping India's northeast. So, and will also generate an economy in Bay of Bengal. So, I know simultaneously we should not forget Myanmar. There are certain difficulties within Myanmar. There is a different system, and they're trying to come out of the system and make a balance between the military and the civilian administration. But India has gone forward and helped it, and they have also sort of reciprocated.
And now, what about the role of China? Growing Chinese influence in the Indian neighborhood has brought out many problems for India. I mean, it has certainly impacted the relations with neighbors. How to face this situation?
Right. So, China is a sovereign country, right? It will make its sovereign choices. It is not only a sovereign country; it's today the world's second biggest power, right? In terms of military, ex-Soviet Union, Russia may still have better technology, military technology. But China, by whatever means they could, whether it's forced technology transfer or tech, what you call the theft of technology, they have developed a certain, capabilities, economic capability primarily, and military capability primarily, and we cannot bypass that. Howsoever nationalist we be, we cannot ignore these facts, right? And similarly, all our neighbors are sovereign countries; they make sovereign choices, right? And I always believe that if you cannot tell one country, oh, don't deal with China and only deal with me, right? Similarly, China cannot tell any country, don't deal with India and only deal with China. Like they have tried to say India's ocean is not Indian ocean. Indian ocean is not India's ocean. Similarly, we can say that South China Sea is not South China Sea, right? So every country is a sovereign country. India is a sovereign power. China is a sovereign power. India is a rising power. So as those sovereign countries in India's neighborhood, they'll make choices. They found, some of them found lucrative offers. Some of them found, the grant and the loans were easy, which China was offering. China was trying to help them in certain areas where support was not coming from elsewhere. India's capacity is, we have certain strengths. When we do foreign assistance, our strength is in capacity building. So the last 50 years we have been training from military to professionals to other skills development, army training, training of the army of the friendly countries, armies, navies, air force of the friendly countries, and slowly giving development assistance for certain projects. But China obviously has excess money, excess capacity, right? They can offer this free, if I call quote unquote free business, they're not free money, right, at the end of the day. And so these countries have made sovereign choices, some of these countries, and they also have Indian projects. Some of them balances well between India and China, like Bangladesh, right, which has not fallen into a debt trap, like unlike Sri Lanka or Nepal or Maldives. But now when these countries make independent sovereign choices, if China is giving them something, we should not complain. Rather than complaining, we should try and see what better we can offer. How can we sweeten the deal? If China is offering X, can we offer Y? Because of limited capacity, as on date, we are a 3 trillion economy. China is a 13 trillion economy. This is a fact of life. We have to accept that. And if China is giving X, how can we sweeten the deal? And we have certain advantages vis-a-vis our neighbor, right? From geography to history to culture to the things that we can offer. The China cannot offer. Those are they are alien to the Chinese culture, for example. They are more comfortable in India. What can we offer? Liberal visas, offering scholarships for students, making easy travel, opening up markets, giving more market access, making easy trade deals, and also that in terms of disaster, again because of the geography, today Maldives or Sri Lanka is facing a trouble. Water, like Maldives or even Mauritius and Seychelles, they made conscious choice in the 1960s when they became independent that India will be the net security provider. So at the end of the day, India is a net security provider here. There's a geography we cannot overcome or we shouldn't forget. There's a history we cannot forget, right? So there is an old civilization, in the sense an old power in the region, and there is a new power, right? So for those sovereign countries, they have to balance. For India has to
they have to decide in their own national interest.
Absolutely, national interest, balance, because at the end of the day, if they fall into debt trap, and they are falling,
they will be responsible for their own failure.
Right, but then India also, it also impacts it increases India's cost to deal with those countries, right? So, and that along with that, what has happened is some of these projects which were continuing for many years were brought under the Mega Belt and Road Initiative. Now, the Belt and Road Initiative, we don't know what is the end goal of this Belt and Road Initiative. India has a stated position, and I believe that's a very principled position. Today, the entire world acknowledges the position that India had taken. And, because some of these projects, in my opinion, has strategic objectives beyond commercial objectives for China, because they are trying to come into Indian Ocean region. And to come into Indian Ocean region, they have to be active with with our neighbors. So there are two aspects. One, the neighbors' sovereign choices, and B, Chinese long-term goals. So they made choices, they needed support, and somewhere it matched with China's long-term goals, and they utilized it, or they as they had the excess capacity, they offered it to them. They sweetened the deal. Now we have to see how we sweeten the deal.
But they failed in Sri Lanka and Maldives.
Right. Because they probably still don't understand the dynamics of democracy and how they function. They think that if they can support, so they have to nuance. They have to play, they have to know how to function with democracies, and there will be change of government, And therefore,